Today we are going to talk about dividing with remainders. Now, remember at this stage, we are not going to keep a remainder necessarily. We are going to take a look at the problem and see if we should turn it into a fraction or we could turn it into a decimal, or maybe we use that remainder in our answer, but we don't just go ahead and write that little r with however many are left over. So let's take a look at this problem and give it a try. It says that a 301-foot high swing at an amusement park can take 64 people on each ride. A total of 8,983 people ride the swing today. All the rides are full except for the last ride. How many rides are given? How many people are on the last ride? So we have two questions to answer today. Let's take a look at our numbers. We are thinking about this amusement park, and we see that this swing can hold 64 people each. Okay, and we know that 8,983 rode today. Here we have 301-foot high swing. That doesn't do anything for us, so I'm actually going to cross it out right now. I need to know about the 64 people per ride and the 8,983 people in total for today. Now we're splitting up that 8,983 people into groups of 64. The total number of people that rode divided by the number of people that can ride each ride. So let's go ahead and set that up here. We've got 8,983 divided by 64. Okay, to start my division problem, I now like to make a list of my multiples. I've already done it here. Remember that we make our list of multiples by taking that number of groups and making a list. 64 plus 64 is 128, or otherwise known as 64 times 2. This is 64 times 3, 64 times 4, 64 times 5, and 64 times 6. Now I could keep going, but I'm going to pause there and see if I need to go on any further. Remember that we can just get that by adding. So 64 plus 64 is 128. 128 plus another 64 is 192, and so on and so forth. There's one more piece I want to make sure I write down if necessary, and that is my steps for my division problem. Okay, so I first divide, multiply, subtract, and then bring down. Sometimes it helps me to keep that checklist nearby. All right, so let's see how many rides were given. We start by saying, okay, 64. How many times does 64 go into 8? Well, 64 can't go into 8, so I'm going to put a 0 up here. This helps me keep everything in my answer in line. Because 64 does not go into 8, we now combine that 8 with that 9, okay? How many times does 64 go into 89? So I take a look, and I know that 89 is right in here. So it only goes in completely one time. I've done my division, so now I multiply. 64 times 1 is 64. I need to subtract now. 89 minus 64 gets me 25. I've subtracted, so next I bring down. I bring down just one digit directly to the right. I keep moving one digit at a time. Now I need to see how many times I take this and go back up to my division and see how many times 64 goes into 258. I take a look and I see that 258 would be right here. Now, we're very close with that 256, but we can't get another 64 between 256 and 258. So I know that it goes in 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And I know that 64 times 4 is 256. From here, I subtract. And 258 minus 256 is 2. And now I bring down. All right, so I go back up to my top and start with my division. 64 goes into 23 0 times. We cannot forget to put that 0. 64 does not go into 23. It goes in 0 times, so we do put that down. Now we multiply it. 64 times 0 is 0. Subtract 23. Now, I have nothing left here. I could put a decimal here and add on zeros. At this time, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it as it is. And I've got 23 left over. So if I were to write this as a fraction, this would be my whole number. This is my denominator because that's my number of groups and that did not change. It's not going to change. I still have 64 in a group. And then I have 23 left over, so that's my numerator. So writing this as a fraction would leave me with 140 and 23/64. Now, we want to go ahead and take a look at what the question is asking us. Here it's asking us how many rides are given. Well, if I look here, I know that this is the number of full rides. But this answer is telling me that I have a part of a ride, and that's not true, right? I got one more full ride in. One more ride in. It just wasn't full of people, okay? There were only 23 people. So this is the people on the last ride. So this tells us how many full rides plus one more with these final 23 people. That tells us how many rides were given. Well, 141 rides were given. And the second question says, how many people are on the last ride? 23 people, with only 23 people on the last ride. And there's your answer.